I'm now heading just outside of Cusco to explore the ruins of the Saksaywaman Archaeological Park. Good morning, we're in Saksaywaman. This is the most famous archaeological site in Cusco, and it's also one of the most mysterious archaeological sites in the entire world. Archaeologists are still debating as to when, how, and even who built this site, and even what its purpose was. Now, the Inca told the Spanish that these giant limestone blocks were moved by giants known as Gentiles using their magical whips. However, mainstream archaeologists believe that the oldest parts of the site were built around 1100 by a pre-Inca culture called the Quilque. Now, archaeologists believe that the site was expanded by the Incas in the 15th century, and they built it atop the original Quilque structures. It is estimated that between 20 to 30,000 people worked on the site from 1431 to 1508. Now, when the city of Cusco was laid out in the shape of a puma, Saksaywaman represented the puma's head, and in fact the word Saksaywaman translates to head of puma. Now, for many years it was believed that this site was a massive fortress. However, recent archaeological evidence suggests there was actually a temple used to worship the sun and thunder god, and that the Incas built these massive walls simply to show off their power. Now, the zigzag shape of these walls actually represents thunder and lightning, and this temple was so massive that it could have easily housed the entire population of Cusco. Saksaywaman was also the site of the bloodiest battle during the siege of Cusco, which lasted from May 6, 1536 to March of 1537. The siege was orchestrated by Manco Inca Yapanqui, a puppet ruler of Francisco Pizarro who grew tired of being abused by the Spanish. The siege began on May 6, 1536, and the Incas were able to take control of the main square. But soon after, Spanish troops and their native allies under the command of Juan Pizarro stormed Saksaywaman and successfully defeated the Inca and took back the city. Juan Pizarro died a few days later from head injuries sustained during the battle, and Manco Inca fled to Ollantaytambo. After the battle, the Spanish took some of the smaller stones from the temple to build churches and haciendas in Cusco. Right here we have the remains of the Muyumarca towers, were originally a series of 365-foot high concentric towers consisting of 4 floors. Now, the purpose of these towers is still unknown, but during the Battle of 1536, the Spanish would force the Incas into the towers where they would murder them, and in fact the Inca Titu Cusi jumped to his death from the top of the tower to avoid capture and execution at the hands of the Spanish. Now, these stones are fit together so perfectly that you can't even fit a piece of paper in between them, and scientists still aren't sure exactly how they were crafted so precisely. One of the ways to tell that this was a temple and not a fortress is because the stones have no mortar. All the other structures like royal residences or fortresses, they were built using mortar. This site also plays host to the Inti Raymi festival each June 24, the biggest festival in Cusco. We're at the ancient site of Kenko, and the name means labyrinth or zigzag, and they believe that the name either originated from the labyrinth of cave-like passages carved into the stone here, some natural, some hand carved, and also because there's this rock with a zigzag snake on it. The site was used for funerary rituals as well as a place of worship of the sun, moon, and star gods. The zigzag part of which branches off into an underground chamber was used to judge the soul of the deceased and also to determine the fate of next year's crop. Chicha or llama blood would be poured into the zigzag, and the direction it flowed indicated whether the person had lived a good or bad life, as well as the fate of next year's crop. We're inside the chamber of sacrifice. This right here is actually an altar that was believed to perform both human and animal sacrifices as well as to mummify the dead. This part of the ruins is called the amphitheater, and it was most likely used to perform ritual sacrifice. Now that large stone we see right there in the middle of the amphitheater is believed to have either been carved in the shape of a puma or contained modelings of other zoomorphic figures which were deliberately destroyed by the Spanish. During the winter solstice, the rocks of the site actually cast a shadow of a puma, which is an example of what's known as archaeoastronomy. These ruins are called Puka Pucara, and the name translates to Red Fortress, and it gets that name because the stones and soil have a reddish hue to it, and the structure also turns red at dusk. Although archaeologists are still debating what its exact purpose was, they believe that it most likely served as a military checkpoint. Some archaeologists argue that it was nothing more than a tombo or rest stop for hunters, travelers, and Inca nobles, as the site contained luxurious baths, canals, plazas, fountains, and houses. The site is believed to have been built sometime in the 1400s by Pachacutic. But the interesting thing about this site is that it lacks the architectural grandeur of some other Inca sites in the area, which leaves archaeologists to believe that it was built in a hurry.
In less than 24 hours.
These are the ruins of Tambo Machu, which translates to guest house cave. It's also known as Bano Inuscas or Inca watering place. The terrace structures at Tambo Machu consist of aqueducts, canals, and small waterfalls originating from nearby thermal springs. The site served both as a place of religious worship of water as well as a spa where Inca rulers and noblemen would come for therapeutic baths. The 10th Inca ruler, Tupac Yupanqui, used this area as a private game reserve and would often stop here during his hunting trips. A circular tower once stood in front of the site, suggesting it might have also served some military and defense purpose. Though it's not advised, some locals still drink and bathe in the water and conduct ceremonies here during the Andean New Year. I'm now making my way to the South Valley. My first stop are the Inca terraces of Tipon. This is Tipon, and the site was originally a royal hacienda that was constructed around 500 years ago by the 8th Inca ruler Wiracocha for his father after he returned from a battle with the Chancas, and he constructed it as a place of refuge for him, and his father wasn't the only one to seek refuge here. Other Inca warlords also sought refuge here at Tipon, and they had these huge defensive walls constructed in an effort to keep outsiders out and like make it difficult for outsiders to enter the site. The site later developed into a temple used to worship the water god as well as a center for experimental agriculture, which is the reason we see all these terraces right here. The main attraction of Tipon are these spectacular waterfalls we see right here. The Inca actually constructed an intricate canal system to deliver water to their crops, and these canals are still utilized by local farmers today. Have a look at this. If you look all around us, you can see on the walls of these terraces, we have these small stone steps. This is what the Incas used to climb from one terrace to the other, and we're actually standing on a terrace right now. These days it's all grass, but during the Inca times they would plant different sort of crops here, mainly different varieties of corn and potatoes. Yeah, this was actually the water temple. I'm now continuing south to Piquillacta and Rumicolca. From there I'll visit the famous San Pedro Church in Andahuaylas. This is Piquillacta, and this site was built not by the Inca but by the Wari, a culture which predated the Inca by about 700 years and lasted 4 times longer. Archaeological evidence suggests that these walls we see were originally covered with mud that was colored white using gypsum. Now, the city was inhabited by the Wari from 750 AD to 1200 AD. This site is believed to have been home to around 10,000 people and contained around 200 homes and 500 storehouses. When the Inca civilization came into being around 1200 AD, they wiped out the entire Wari population and in the 15th century took the city of Piquillacta for themselves. And the name Piquillacta is actually Quechua for place of fleas. I didn't expect the site to be so massive, and this architecture actually reminds me a lot of the Anasazi ruins we have in the American Southwest. Very similar. This site right here is called Rumicolca, and these massive 40-foot high gates you see behind me were originally constructed by the Wari but were later reinforced by the Inca. And when the Wari built them, they used them to guard the southern entrance to their empire, and when the Inca took them over, they used them as a checkpoint for people traveling to Cusco. Here you can see the original Wari stones, and over there you can see those blocks of polished andesite that the Incas added on. Rumicolca is also the site of a massive aqueduct, and there's also an interesting local legend about how it was created. The legend says that an Inca princess named Coritica offered her love to whoever could deliver water to Piquillacta. 3 princes took on the challenge, and the first 2 failed, but finally the third, a Quechua-born prince from Cusco, was able to complete the task and build a 6-mile-long aqueduct that ran all the way to Piquillacta and delivered water to the city. And the most famous part of the aqueduct actually ran right through Rumicolca. We're in the village of Andahuaylas, and behind me is the town's most famous attraction, the Church of San Pedro. It was built by Spanish Jesuits between 1570 and 1606 on the site of a former Inca ceremonial site. And the church is nicknamed the Sistine Chapel of the Americas because of the spectacular murals which, along with the rest of the interior, were done by artist Luis Dariano in the 1620s.